I walked into their house thinking it was just a normal visit before the wedding, but what I saw made my blood run cold. My wife, laughing with my daughter's fiancé, closer than anyone should ever be. Something about their smiles, their whispers. It was wrong. It felt forbidden. My mind raced. Questions I wasn't ready to hear tore through me. What had been happening behind my back? And the truth I discovered in that moment, shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. And don't forget to subscribe. I've got plenty more stories like this one to keep you company. My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 72 years old, sitting here in my old leather recliner that's seen better days, looking back at what happened just 6 months ago. This chair was a gift from my daughter Emma when she graduated college, back when the world made sense, back when I thought I knew my family. I wish I could tell you this story has a happy ending, but life isn't always that generous. What I can tell you is the truth, every painful word of it. I've been married to my wife Margaret for 43 years. 43 years of shared mornings, of coffee made just the way she likes it, of arguments about nothing and everything, of building a life together brick by brick. We raised our daughter Emma in a small house in Connecticut, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. Margaret worked as a librarian for 30 years. I was a high school history teacher, retired now for 7 years. We were ordinary people living an ordinary life. Emma is our only child. We wanted more. God knows we tried, but it wasn't meant to be. So we poured everything we had into her. Piano lessons, soccer practice, summer camps, college tuition. We gave her the world. And she turned out beautiful, inside and out. Smart as a whip, kind-hearted, with her mother's green eyes and my stubborn streak. She became a pediatric nurse, which made Margaret cry with pride the day she got her license. 2 years ago, Emma met Daniel Crawford at a hospital charity event. He was 34, a financial advisor with one of those big firms in Hartford, drove a BMW, wore expensive suits. Handsome in that clean-cut, all-American way. When she first brought him home for dinner, I have to admit I was impressed. Polite, well-spoken, asked about my teaching career, complimented Margaret's pot roast. He seemed perfect. Too perfect, maybe, but I pushed that thought away. I wanted my daughter to be happy. They dated for a year before he proposed. I remember that night clearly because Emma called us at 11 in the evening, crying happy tears, saying yes over and over. Margaret was beside herself with joy, already planning the wedding in her head before we even hung up the phone. Me? I was happy for my little girl, but something gnawed at me. Call it a father's intuition, or maybe just the paranoia of an old man who doesn't want to let go. Either way, I kept my mouth shut. The wedding was set for September, 6 months away at the time all this started. Margaret threw herself into the planning with a passion I hadn't seen in years. She was at Emma's apartment 3, sometimes 4 times a week, looking at flower arrangements, tasting cakes, debating between ivory and champagne-colored napkins. I stayed out of it mostly, figured it was their thing. Mother and daughter, building memories together. Daniel became a regular fixture at our Sunday dinners. Every week, there he was, sitting at our table, eating our food, talking about the stock market, and his latest clients. He'd bring wine, expensive bottles I couldn't pronounce, and he'd always have some story that made Margaret laugh. Emma would look at him with those love-struck eyes, and I'd feel that gnawing sensation again, that whisper in my gut that something wasn't quite right. But here's the thing about gut feelings. You can ignore them. You can tell yourself you're being unreasonable, overprotective, jealous even. You can rationalize away every little red flag until you're colorblind to danger. And that's exactly what I did. I wanted Emma to be happy. I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. So I swallowed my doubts and smiled across the dinner table at the man who was going to marry my daughter. 3 months before the wedding, Daniel and Emma bought a house together. A nice colonial in West Hartford, 3 bedrooms, white picket fence, the whole American dream. They invited us over for a housewarming party, and I remember walking through those empty rooms, listening to Emma talk about what furniture would go where, what color she wanted to paint the nursery one day. Margaret held my hand and whispered, "We did good, Robert. We raised a woman who found a good man." I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But that night, as we were leaving, I saw something. Just a flash. A moment that lasted maybe 2 seconds. but burned itself into my brain. Daniel was helping Margaret with her coat in the hallway. His hand lingered on her shoulder just a beat too long. She looked up at him with this smile I didn't recognize. And then it was gone, and I told myself I'd imagined it. The weeks leading up to that day, the day everything fell apart, were normal, painfully, boringly normal. Margaret was at Emma's house constantly, helping with last-minute wedding details. I'd come home from the gym or the hardware store to an empty house more often than not. She'd leave notes on the counter, helping Emma with seating chart, leftovers in fridge. I didn't think anything of it. Why would I? I trusted my wife. That's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. It only works because of trust. If you suspect everyone all the time, you're miserable but protected. But I trusted Margaret with everything I had. 43 years of marriage had earned that trust, built it up like a fortress I thought was impenetrable. I was a fool. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late August, 2 weeks before the wedding. I'd been at my monthly checkup with Dr. Harrison, routine stuff for a man my age. Blood pressure, cholesterol, the works. Everything came back fine, and I was in good spirits, thinking I'd surprise Margaret and take her out for an early dinner at that Italian place she loves downtown. She'd mentioned that morning she'd be at Emma's all day, helping with the final dress fitting. I called her cell phone around 3 in the afternoon. No answer. Called again 15 minutes later. Nothing. Not unusual. She often left her phone in her purse and didn't hear it ring. So I decided to just drive over to Emma's house. It was only 20 minutes away, and I could surprise them both. Maybe take my girls out for an early dinner, make a whole thing of it. The drive over was peaceful. Late summer in Connecticut is beautiful. Trees still green, air still warm, but with that first hint of autumn coming. I had the radio on, some oldies station playing the Beatles. I remember singing along to Yesterday and thinking how appropriate that was, how we spend so much of our later years living in yesterday. I had no idea how true that was about to become. I pulled into Emma's driveway at exactly 3:45. I remember checking my watch because I was thinking about whether the dress shop would still be open if they were running late. Daniel's BMW was in the driveway next to Emma's Honda. That struck me as odd. He should have been at work, but I figured maybe he'd come home early to see the dress or something. Men do that kind of thing when they're in love, right? The front door was unlocked. Emma always left it unlocked when she was home. Drove me crazy worrying about her safety, but she insisted their neighborhood was safe. I walked in calling out, "Hello? Anybody home?" No answer. I could hear voices coming from the back of the house, from the den where they'd set up Daniel's home office. Voices and laughter. My wife's laughter, that particular giggle she had when she was genuinely amused by something. I walked down the hallway, my footsteps quiet on the hardwood floor. I wasn't trying to sneak up on anyone. I just naturally walk soft, always have. Teacher's habit, I suppose, moving through classrooms without disturbing students. As I got closer to the den, I could make out words. Margaret's voice, bright and animated in a way I hadn't heard in years, and Daniel's voice, lower, intimate. I reached the doorway and stopped. The den door was half open, and through the gap I could see them. Margaret was sitting on the leather couch, the one that cost $3,000 that Emma had been so proud of. Daniel was sitting next to her, closer than necessary, his arm stretched along the back of the couch behind her shoulders. They were looking at something on a laptop, heads bent together, and they were laughing. But it wasn't the proximity that froze me in place. It was the way they looked at each other. Margaret's hand was on Daniel's knee, resting there like it belonged there, like it had been there 100 times before. Daniel's fingers were playing with a strand of her hair that had fallen loose from her bun, and the way they were smiling at each other. It was familiar, intimate, wrong in every possible way. I must have made a sound, a gasp or a sharp intake of breath, because they both looked up at the same time. Their faces went through this rapid transformation, surprise, then guilt, then a kind of panicked calculation. Margaret's hand flew off Daniel's knee like it had been burned. Daniel straightened up, putting distance between them that felt like closing the barn door after the horses had escaped. "Robert!" Margaret's voice was too bright, too loud. "What are you doing here?" There was something in her tone, an accusation hiding behind the surprise, as if I was the one in the wrong for showing up unannounced, as if this was my house to invade, my private moment to interrupt. The nerve of that, The absolute audacity hit me like a physical blow. "I came to surprise you," I said, and my voice sounded strange in my own ears, distant and cold. "Thought we could go to dinner." I was looking at Daniel now, really looking at him. His face had gone pale under his tan, and he couldn't quite meet my eyes. That guilty look, that's what confirmed it. Whatever I'd just walked in on, it wasn't innocent. Margaret stood up quickly, smoothing down her skirt with shaking hands. "We were just going over the wedding budget," she said, words tumbling out too fast. Daniel had some questions about the payments, and Emma had to run to the florist, so I stayed to help him sort it out. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that I knew in my bones it wasn't the first time she'd told it. "Where's Emma?" I asked, still standing in the doorway, unable to make myself walk into that room. The space felt contaminated somehow, thick with secrets and deception. Daniel finally stood up too, running his hand through his hair, that nervous gesture I'd seen him do a dozen times at Sunday dinner. Now it looked different. Everything looked different. "She went to pick up the final bouquet samples," Daniel said, his voice steady now, back in control. He was a financial advisor after all. Lying came with the territory, didn't it? "She'll be back any minute. Why don't you wait? We can all have coffee together." The casual invitation, the easy smile trying to creep back onto his face, it made my stomach turn. I looked at my wife. 43 years of marriage, and I was looking at a stranger. Her face was flushed, whether from guilt or something else I didn't want to think about. Her lipstick was fresh, I noticed. She never wore lipstick just to help with wedding planning. She was wearing that blue dress I'd always liked, the one that made her eyes stand out. She'd dressed up for this, for him. How long? The question came out before I could stop it. 2 words that held everything I needed to know and everything I was terrified to hear. Margaret's face went white. Daniel stepped forward, hands raised like he was trying to calm a spooked horse. "Robert, I think you're misunderstanding what you saw," he started, but I cut him off with a look. I'd spent 35 years teaching high school. I knew a liar when I saw one. I knew the difference between innocent and guilty. And right now, standing in that room, I was looking at 2 of the guiltiest people I'd ever seen. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't insult me by lying right now." My hands were shaking, so I shoved them in my pockets. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience, watching this scene unfold from somewhere outside myself. This couldn't be happening. Not to me, not to us, not with him. Margaret took a step toward me, tears forming in her eyes. Those tears that had worked on me for 43 years, that had softened every argument, smoothed over every disagreement. But now they just looked like another manipulation, another tool in her arsenal of deception. "Robert, please, let's go home and talk about this," she said, her voice breaking. "Talk about what, Margaret?" I heard myself ask. "Talk about why my wife is sitting on a couch with our daughter's fiancé looking like—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't say the words out loud because saying them would make them real, would make this nightmare something I couldn't wake up from. Daniel moved toward the door, toward me, and I stepped back instinctively. "I think I should go," he said. "This is between you and Margaret." The coward's way out, removing himself from the equation, as if he wasn't standing right there in the equation with us. As if his hands hadn't been in my wife's hair 30 seconds ago. "You're not going anywhere," I said, and something in my voice must have scared him because he stopped dead in his tracks. "You're going to stand right there and tell me the truth. Both of you. I deserve that much, don't I? After 43 years, after welcoming you into my family, into my home, I deserve the goddamn truth." The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking, each second an eternity. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, and I could hear the sound of my world cracking apart, piece by piece, like ice breaking up on a frozen lake in spring. Margaret sank back down onto the couch, her face in her hands. Daniel stood frozen by the desk, looking everywhere except at me. And I stood there in the doorway, a 72-year-old man who'd thought he knew everything about his life, realizing he knew nothing at all. "How long?" I asked again. And this time my voice broke on the words. "How long has this been going on?" Because it was going on, whatever this was. I could see it in every line of their bodies, in the way they couldn't look at me, in the guilty silence that filled the room like poison gas. Margaret looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks, and in that moment, I saw something that terrified me more than anything else. I saw love in her eyes. Not for me, for him, for the man who was supposed to marry our daughter in 2 weeks. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a moment of weakness, a mistake, a one-time thing. This was something deeper, darker, more devastating than I could have imagined. "Robert," she whispered, and in that one word I heard everything I needed to know. I heard the confession, the guilt, the love, the betrayal. I heard 43 years of marriage shattering like glass. I heard my daughter's future exploding before it even began. I heard the sound of my heart breaking in real time, and I still didn't know the worst of it yet. God help me, I didn't know the half of it. I don't remember walking out of that house. One moment I was standing in the doorway of that den, staring at the wreckage of my life, and the next I was sitting in my car in the driveway, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had turned white. My breath was coming in short gasps like I'd just run a marathon. Somewhere behind me I could hear Margaret calling my name, but it sounded distant, underwater, like we were in different worlds. I started the engine. Muscle memory took over. Put the car in reverse, checked the mirrors, back out slow. My hands knew what to do, even though my brain had shut down completely. I could see Margaret in the rearview mirror, standing on the front porch, her arms wrapped around herself. Daniel was next to her, his hand on her shoulder, comforting her. The man who was supposed to marry my daughter was comforting my wife while I drove away from the scene of my own destruction. I drove without knowing where I was going. Just drove through familiar streets that suddenly looked foreign, past houses where normal people were living normal lives, where husbands trusted their wives and fathers looked forward to their daughters' weddings. I ended up at Riverside Park, the same park where I used to take Emma when she was little. I parked under an oak tree and sat there, staring at the Connecticut River flowing past, steady and indifferent to human suffering. My phone started ringing. Margaret's name lit up the screen, again and again. I let it ring. What was there to say? What words could possibly make sense of what I'd seen? After the 5th call, I turned the phone off completely. The silence in the car was absolute, broken only by my own ragged breathing and the sound of my heart breaking over and over with each new realization. How long had this been going on? That's what my mind kept circling back to. Days? Weeks? Months? Had it started before the engagement or after? Had my wife been sleeping with our daughter's fiancé while we all sat around the Sunday dinner table like a happy family? The images came unbidden. Margaret helping with wedding planning as an excuse to see him, late nights at Emma's house. Those fresh applications of lipstick I'd noticed, but dismissed. I thought about Emma, my beautiful, trusting daughter who was planning her dream wedding, picking out flowers and cakes and napkins, completely unaware that the 2 people she trusted most in the world were betraying her in the worst possible way. How was I going to tell her? How do you tell your child that her fiancé and her mother? God, I couldn't even finish the thought. It was too monstrous, too unthinkable. The sun was setting when I finally left the park. I drove home on autopilot, my mind numb, operating on some basic survival instinct. When I pulled into our driveway, Margaret's car was there. Of course it was. Where else would she be? I sat in my car for a long time, staring at our house. The house we'd bought 38 years ago, where we'd raised our daughter, where we'd built what I thought was a solid marriage. Now it looked like a mausoleum, a tomb holding the corpse of everything I'd believed in. I walked in through the front door. Margaret was sitting on the living room couch, still in that blue dress, her face blotchy from crying. She stood up when she saw me, hands twisting together nervously. "Robert," she started, but I held up my hand. I couldn't bear to hear her voice right now, couldn't risk the explanations and excuses that I knew were coming. "Don't," I said quietly. "Just don't. Not yet." I walked past her to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. She followed me, hovering in the doorway like a ghost haunting her own life. The kitchen where we'd had 10,000 normal conversations, where we'd laughed over coffee and argued about bills and planned our retirement. It all felt contaminated now. "We need to talk," Margaret said, her voice small and broken. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised both of us. Talk? What was there to talk about? But she was right, of course. We needed to talk. I needed to know. Even though knowing would destroy me, I needed the truth. All of it. I turned to face her, leaning back against the counter, arms crossed over my chest like armor. "How long?" I asked for the third time that day. My voice was steady now, cold and clinical, like I was asking about the weather. Margaret flinched at the tone, wrapped her arms around herself in that defensive gesture I knew so well. For a long moment, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she took a shuddering breath. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months. The words hit me like a physical blow. 6 months of lies, 6 months of betrayal, 6 months of looking me in the eye every single day and pretending everything was normal. 6 months of planning a wedding that was built on the rotting foundation of their affair. I felt my knees go weak and grabbed the counter to steady myself. "Since March," I said, doing the math, my teacher's brain still working, even as my heart was dying. "Since before they got engaged?" Margaret nodded, tears streaming down her face now. Oh God, no. Daniel had proposed to Emma while he was sleeping with her mother. He'd gotten down on one knee and promised to love and cherish my daughter while he was betraying her in the worst possible way. The depravity of it, the sheer cruelty, took my breath away. "How?" The question came out strangled. How did you? I couldn't formulate a complete sentence. My mind was fragmenting, trying to process information it wasn't built to handle. A wife of 43 years, a mother, a grandmother-to-be, carrying on with her daughter's fiancé. It was so far outside the bounds of acceptable human behavior that I couldn't fit it into any framework I understood. Margaret sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her whole body shaking. "It just happened," she said, and I wanted to scream. Nothing just happens. Betrayal is a choice, a series of choices, hundreds of tiny decisions that lead to the ultimate destruction of everything sacred. But I bit my tongue and waited for her to continue, because I needed to know. I needed to understand, even if understanding would kill me. "He came over one day in February," she said, her voice barely audible. "Emma was at work and he stopped by to drop off something for her. I invited him in for coffee. We talked. He was so charming, so attentive, asking about my life, my interests, things you and I hadn't talked about in years, Robert. When was the last time you asked about my day? When was the last time you really looked at me?" There it was. The blame shifting, the justification. This was my fault somehow, for not asking the right questions, for not paying enough attention. 43 years of marriage, of being a faithful husband, of working to provide for our family, and it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. A younger man with smooth words and selfish intentions pays her a little attention, and she throws away everything we'd built. "So you slept with him," I said flatly. "Our daughter's fiancé. You slept with the man she loves, the man she's planning to spend the rest of her life with because I didn't ask about your day enough." The bitterness in my voice was corrosive, eating away at the last remnants of the man I used to be. Margaret flinched again, but didn't deny it. "It wasn't like that at first," she said, and now there was a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "We just talked. He made me feel young again, Robert. He made me feel seen. Do you know how long it's been since I felt that way? Do you know how invisible I've felt these last few years?" Her eyes flashed with something that looked almost like anger, as if I was the villain in this story. I stared at her, this woman I'd spent more than 4 decades with, and realized I didn't know her at all. The Margaret I thought I'd married would never do this. The woman I'd trusted with everything would never betray our daughter this way. But people change, don't they? Or maybe they just reveal who they always were underneath. Maybe I'd been married to a stranger all along. "When did it become physical?" I asked, because I needed the complete picture, needed every detail of how my life had been dismantled. Margaret looked down at her hands, tears dripping onto her lap. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. "When, Margaret?" My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "Late March," she said finally. "Emma had a night shift at the hospital. Daniel came over to drop off the engagement photos and She couldn't finish, but she didn't need to. I could fill in the blanks. In our house, probably. In our bed, maybe. The thought made bile rise in my throat. I turned and gripped the edge of the sink, fighting the urge to vomit. Behind me, I could hear Margaret crying harder now, Great gasping sobs that once would have moved me to comfort her. Now they just sounded like self-pity, like she was the victim here. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying, over and over like a broken prayer. "I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to hurt anyone. If you've ever felt something like this, let me know in the comments." Because right then, standing in my kitchen listening to my wife confess to an affair with our daughter's fiancé, I felt like I was dying. Not metaphorically, literally dying. My chest hurt. My breathing was shallow. My left arm was tingling. For a wild moment, I thought I was having a heart attack, and part of me welcomed it. Anything to escape this nightmare. But I didn't die. I just stood there, breathing through the pain, waiting for it to pass. When I could finally speak again, my voice came out hoarse and broken. "Does Emma know?" It was the question that terrified me most. Please, God, let her not know. Let her be innocent in all this. Let her still have her dreams intact. "No," Margaret said quickly. "God, no. Robert, she can't know. It would destroy her. We have to protect her." The audacity of that statement, the sheer hypocrisy, made me laugh again. That same harsh, broken sound. Protect her? Protect her from what? From the truth. From the people who were supposed to love her most in the world. We? I turned to face her. "There is no we anymore, Margaret. You destroyed that. You and Daniel destroyed everything." The reality was settling over me now, heavy and suffocating. My marriage was over. My daughter's engagement was over. Our family was over. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd believed in, gone in one Tuesday afternoon. Margaret stood up, reaching for me. "Robert, please. We can work through this. It's over with Daniel, I swear. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. But we can fix this. 43 years. We can't throw that away." Her desperation was palpable, but it just made me feel empty. She'd already thrown it away. She just didn't want to face the consequences. "It's over," I said simply. "Whatever we had, whatever I thought we had, it's over." The words came easier than I expected, like they'd been waiting there all along, ready for this moment. Margaret's face crumpled, and she sank back into the chair, burying her face in her hands. "I need you to leave," I continued. "Tonight. Pack a bag and go." "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked through her tears. I shrugged. I didn't care. That was the strangest part. I genuinely didn't care where she went or what happened to her. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by this stranger who'd betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. "Go to your sister's. Go to a hotel. Go to hell for all I care. Just get out of my house." Margaret looked up at me, shocked. In 43 years, I'd never spoken to her like that. But then, in 43 years, she'd never done anything like this. We'd had arguments, sure, disagreements, but we'd always been respectful, always been kind. That marriage, those people, they didn't exist anymore. Now there was just this, two broken people standing in a kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of their life. "What about Emma?" Margaret asked, grasping at straws. "What about the wedding? We have to tell her something." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of that responsibility crushing down on me. How? How do you tell your daughter something like this? How do you look her in the eye and destroy her world? "I don't know," I admitted. "But whatever we tell her, it has to be the truth. All of it. She deserves that much." Margaret started to protest, started to say something about protecting Emma, about not hurting her. But I cut her off. "You should have thought about protecting her before you started sleeping with her fiancé. Don't pretend you care about her feelings now." The cruelty in my words was intentional, aimed to hurt, and it landed perfectly. Margaret recoiled like I'd slapped her. Good. Let her hurt. Let her feel a fraction of the pain she'd caused. I knew I was being harsh, knew I'd probably regret it later, but right now, I wanted her to suffer. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her choices burning through her like acid. Margaret stood up slowly, her whole body trembling. "I'll pack a bag," she said quietly. "But Robert, please, think about this. Think about what you're throwing away. We can get through this. We can go to counseling. We can—" I held up my hand again, silencing her. There was no we. That was the point she couldn't seem to grasp. I walked out of the kitchen and went to our bedroom. My bedroom now, I supposed. I could hear Margaret moving around upstairs in the guest room, opening drawers, the zip of a suitcase. Each sound was like a nail in the coffin of our marriage. I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared for 43 years and stared at the wedding photo on the dresser. Young faces, hopeful smiles, two people who thought they knew what forever meant. I picked up the frame and looked at that young version of myself, 29 years old, cocky and confident, thinking he had the world figured out. What would I tell him if I could? Would I warn him? Would I tell him to guard his heart, to not trust so completely, to keep something back for himself? Or would I tell him to enjoy it while it lasted? Because even broken, the good years had been worth something. 20 minutes later, Margaret came downstairs with a small suitcase. She stood in the bedroom doorway, looking at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm going to my sister's," she said, "just for a few days, until we can figure out what to do." She still thought this was temporary, that we'd figure something out and go back to normal. She didn't understand that normal was dead. "Take whatever time you need," I said without looking at her. "But Margaret, understand this. We're done. This marriage is over. I'll file for divorce next week." The words should have been harder to say, should have caught in my throat, but they came out smooth and certain. In that moment, I meant them with every fiber of my being. Margaret made a sound, half sob, half gasp. "Robert, please don't do this. Don't make any permanent decisions right now. You're angry, you're hurt. I understand that. But don't." I finally looked at her, really looked at her, and saw nothing I recognized. This wasn't my wife. My wife would never have done this. "Go," I said quietly. She hesitated, opened her mouth like she had more to say, then closed it again. She picked up her suitcase and walked to the front door. I heard it open, heard her pause, maybe waiting for me to call her back, to tell her I didn't mean it. But I didn't. I sat there in silence until I heard the door close, heard her car start, heard her drive away. Alone in the house, the silence was deafening. I sat there on the bed until darkness fell completely, not bothering to turn on the lights. My phone was still off, so I didn't know if Emma had tried to call, if Daniel had tried to explain, if anyone in the world knew yet that everything had fallen apart. I felt disconnected from reality, like I was floating somewhere outside my own life, watching it burn from a safe distance. Eventually, I got up and walked through the house, turning on lights, looking at the accumulated evidence of 43 years of marriage. Wedding photos, vacation souvenirs, Emma's baby pictures, the artwork Margaret had collected over the years. Every object was a lie now, every memory tainted. Had she been thinking about him when we took that trip to Maine last summer? Had she been wishing I was him at our anniversary dinner? I ended up back in the kitchen with a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving for Emma's wedding. We were supposed to toast the happy couple with this, supposed to celebrate new beginnings. I poured myself a generous glass and sat at the table, in the same chair where I'd eaten 10,000 meals, where I'd helped Emma with homework, where Margaret and I had planned our retirement. The irony wasn't lost on me. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a clean burn, honest and straightforward, unlike everything else in my life. I poured another glass, and another. Not to get drunk, though that would have been a mercy, but just to feel something other than this crushing emptiness. Around midnight, I finally turned my phone back on. It exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls from Emma, 9 from Margaret, 3 from Daniel. Dozens of text messages. I scrolled through them with numb detachment. Emma's messages progressed from concerned to frantic. "Dad, where are you? Mom said you left upset. Please call me. Dad, you're scaring me. Please just let me know you're okay." The love in those messages, the genuine worry, made my heart hurt all over again. You ever gone through something like that yourself? Where you know you have to tell someone something that will destroy them, and every second you delay feels both like cowardice and mercy? That's where I was sitting, looking at my daughter's messages, knowing I had to call her back, knowing that the moment I did, her world would end. I couldn't do it. Not yet. Not over the phone. This required a face-to-face conversation, required me to look her in the eye and tell her the truth. But God, I didn't want to. I wanted to protect her, wanted to keep her innocent just a little longer. But Margaret was right about one thing. Emma deserved the truth. She deserved to know before she married a man who could do this to her. Daniel's messages were different, more calculating, more controlled. "Robert, we need to talk. This isn't what you think. Please don't do anything rash. Let's meet and discuss this like adults. Think about Emma before you do something you'll regret. That last one made me want to throw the phone across the room. Think about Emma. If he'd thought about Emma for 1 second, none of this would have happened. Margaret's messages were pleas, apologies, promises. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. This doesn't have to destroy our family. I love you, Robert. I've always loved you. That last one was the worst. How could she say she loved me? Love doesn't do this. Love doesn't betray and destroy, and then ask for forgiveness, like it's asking for a second helping of dessert. I texted Emma back, just 5 words. I'm fine. Talk tomorrow. Love you. It was the best I could do. Then I turned the phone off again, finished my whiskey, and sat in the dark kitchen until dawn, trying to figure out how to tell my daughter that her fiancé and her mother had been having an affair, and that the wedding she'd been planning for 6 months would never happen. The sun rose on Wednesday morning, indifferent to my suffering. I hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. The images kept playing in my mind like a horror movie on repeat. Margaret's hand on Daniel's knee, their heads bent together, that intimate laughter. How many times had this scene played out? How many times had they been together while I was clueless, while Emma was working her shifts at the hospital, saving lives, believing in her future? I made coffee, went through the motions of a normal morning even though nothing would ever be normal again. My hands were steady as I poured the coffee, as I buttered toast I wouldn't eat. Shock, probably. Or maybe I was just moving past the initial devastation into whatever came next. Acceptance? Resignation? I didn't know what to call it. I just knew I had to keep moving forward. At 8 in the morning, I called Emma. She answered on the first ring, her voice thick with worry and maybe tears. Dad? Oh my God, Dad, where have you been? Mom called me last night hysterical, saying you'd had a fight and you kicked her out. She's at Aunt Linda's. What's going on? Are you okay? Her voice so familiar and loving, so trusting, broke something inside me that had managed to stay intact through everything else. I closed my eyes and leaned against the counter. Emma, honey, I need you to come over. We need to talk. My voice was calm, almost eerily so. The calm before the storm. Are you sick? Is it your heart? The fear in her voice killed me. No, sweetheart, it's not my heart. It's yours that's about to break. No, nothing like that. I'm physically fine. But I need to see you. This morning, if you can. There was a pause, and I could hear her breathing, could almost hear her mind racing through possibilities. Okay, she said slowly. I'm not working today. I can be there in half an hour. Half an hour. 30 minutes until I destroyed my daughter's life. 30 minutes of her still being happy, still believing in her future, still trusting the people she loved. I wanted to tell her not to come, to stay in her bubble of ignorance forever. But that was cowardice talking. I'll be here, I said. Emma, I love you. Remember that, okay? No matter what happens, no matter what I have to tell you, I love you more than anything in this world. The words came out choked, and I heard her breath catch. She knew something was seriously wrong. How could she not? Dad, you're scaring me, she said, her voice small like when she was a little girl. Whatever it is, we can handle it. Just please don't say it like that. Like you're saying goodbye or something. If only it were that simple. If only this were about me leaving, me being sick, me dying. Those would be easier truths to tell. 30 minutes, I repeated, and hung up before she could say anything else. I couldn't hold it together on the phone. I needed to see her face, needed to hold her when the truth hit her like a wrecking ball. I walked to the living room window and watched the street, waiting for her car to appear, dreading it with everything I had. She pulled up exactly 28 minutes later. I watched her get out of her Honda, watched her walk up the driveway with quick, worried steps. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, her nurse's scrubs probably still in the car from her last shift. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup, just my Emma, beautiful and pure, and about to have her heart ripped out. I opened the door before she could knock. She looked at my face and her eyes went wide. Dad, what happened? You look... She stepped inside and hugged me, hard, like she was trying to hold me together. I hugged her back, maybe for the last time as the father she thought she knew, the man she trusted and respected. After today, would she even want to hug me? Would she blame me for telling her? Sit down, honey. I said gently, leading her to the couch. She sat, but her body was tense, coiled like a spring. I sat in the armchair across from her, the same arrangement we'd had for hundreds of father-daughter talks over the years. But this one was different. This one would end everything. "Where's Mom?" she asked. "She called me crying last night, but she wouldn't tell me what happened. She just said you'd had a terrible fight." "Dad, what's going on? Are you leaving her?" The hope in that last question, like maybe that was the worst possibility, cut me deep. "Emma," I started, then had to stop. How? How do you say this?" I looked at my daughter's face, so open and trusting, and wanted to run, wanted to lie, wanted to protect her from this. But she deserved the truth. "Emma, there's no easy way to say this. Yesterday, I went to your house to surprise you and your mom. I thought you were there doing the final dress fitting." Her face was confused. "I wasn't. I was at the florist. Daniel was working from home and Mom said she'd wait for me there." Already the lies, the coordination between them. Emma didn't even question it. Why would she? She trusted them both completely. "I know," I said. "When I got there, I found your mother and Daniel together." I watched her face, saw the moment the words registered, saw confusion turn to a question, saw that question start to form in her eyes. "Emma, they've been having an affair. For 6 months. The silence that followed was absolute. Emma stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language, like the words made no sense at all. Then she laughed, a nervous, disbelieving sound. "What? No, Dad, no. You must have misunderstood something. Mom and Daniel? That's insane. Why would you even—" "I saw them," I said quietly. "I saw the way they looked at each other. And when I confronted them, your mother admitted it. All of it." Emma's face went white. She shook her head, still laughing that horrible nervous laugh, hands coming up like she could physically push away my words. And that's when my daughter's world ended. Right there on our living room couch, I watched the light go out of Emma's eyes, watched her future crumble, watched her heart break in real time. And there wasn't a damn thing I could do to stop it. "No," Emma said, and the word came out small and broken. "No, Dad, you're lying. You have to be lying. This is some kind of sick joke. Mom wouldn't, she couldn't." But even as she said it, I could see her mind working, replaying moments, conversations, all those times Margaret had been at her house helping with wedding plans. The doubt was creeping in, poisoning her certainty. "I wish I was lying, sweetheart," I said, and my voice cracked on the words. "God, I wish this was a joke. But it's not. Your mother admitted it to me last night. 6 months, Emma. Since before Daniel even proposed to you." That detail was the knife twist, and I watched it land. Her face crumpled, tears starting to stream down her cheeks. 6 months, she whispered. While he was asking me to marry him, she couldn't finish. Couldn't say the words out loud because saying them would make them real. She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly, and I moved from the chair to sit beside her, pulling her into my arms like I used to when she was little and had nightmares. But this wasn't a nightmare she could wake up from. This was real, and it was worse than anything her sleeping mind could conjure. She sobbed into my shoulder, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. "How could she? How could Mom do this to me? She's my mother. She's supposed to protect me, not—" "I know, baby. I know." I held her tight, stroking her hair, wishing I could absorb her pain, take it into myself so she wouldn't have to feel it. But that's not how pain works. Each of us has to carry our own burden, and Emma's was crushing her right in front of my eyes. My daughter, my beautiful, kind, trusting daughter, learning that the world was darker than she'd ever imagined. After a while, the sobs quieted to hiccups and shuddering breaths. Emma pulled back, wiping her face with her sleeve. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face blotchy. She looked young and old at the same time, aged by betrayal, diminished by loss. "I need to hear it from her," she said, her voice hoarse. "I need to hear Mom say it." "Are you sure?" I asked gently. "Emma, maybe you should give yourself some time before—" But she was already shaking her head, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. She was a fighter, my girl, always had been. She needed to confront this head-on, Needed to look the monster in the face, even if it destroyed her. She called Margaret. I could hear it ringing on speaker once, twice, 3 times. Then Margaret's voice, thick with tears and hope. "Emma? Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad you called. Your father. He's not thinking clearly. He's upset and he's saying things that—" "Is it true?" Emma interrupted, her voice cold and hard in a way I'd never heard before. "Did you sleep with Daniel? Are you having an affair with my fiancé?" The silence on the other end was deafening. That silence was an answer in itself, and I watched Emma's last shred of hope die in her eyes. "Emma, let me explain," Margaret said, and the desperation in her voice was palpable. "It's complicated. It's not what you think. Your father walked in on something and he misunderstood." Emma laughed, a sound so bitter and broken it made my chest hurt. It was her mother's nervous laugh from yesterday, that disbelieving denial. "Did you sleep with Daniel?" Emma asked again, each word precise and sharp as a scalpel. "Yes or no, Mom? That's all I need to know right now." Another pause, shorter this time, and then Margaret's sob came through the phone, confirming everything without words. But Emma needed the words. "Yes," Margaret whispered. "Yes, but Emma, please let me see you. Let me explain. I never meant for this to happen. I love you so much, sweetheart. You have to know that. I never wanted to hurt you." The audacity of that statement, the sheer self-centered delusion, made me want to grab the phone and scream. Emma's hand was shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. "You love me?" Her voice rose, years of trust turning to rage in an instant. "You love me, but you fucked my fiancé? You love me, but you've been lying to my face for 6 months? You love me, but you helped me plan a wedding to a man you were sleeping with? That's not love, Mom. That's not even close to love." "Emma, please," Margaret begged. But Emma hung up. She threw the phone across the room, and it hit the wall with a satisfying crack. Then she stood up, pacing like a caged animal, hands in her hair, breathing fast and shallow. I stood too, ready to catch her if she fell, but she waved me away. "I can't breathe," she gasped. "Dad, I can't breathe." I recognized the signs of a panic attack, grabbed her shoulders gently, made her look at me. "Emma, look at me. Look at my eyes. Breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it. You're okay. I've got you." We breathed together until her panic subsided, until the color came back to her face. She sank back onto the couch, exhausted, defeated. "What am I going to do?" she asked, looking at me with those lost eyes. "The wedding is in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Dad. We sent out invitations. People bought plane tickets. I have a dress. We have a venue. What am I supposed to do?" "You're going to cancel it," I said firmly. "All of it. And anyone who has a problem with that can go to hell. Emma, you can't marry him. You know that, right? After this, you can't—" She nodded quickly, tears flowing again. Of course she knew, but knowing and accepting are 2 different things. "I loved him," she whispered. "I really loved him, Dad. I thought we were going to have this whole life together. Kids, a house, growing old together. I had it all planned out in my head. And now," her voice broke, "now I find out it was all a lie. He never loved me." How could he, if he could do this? That was the question, wasn't it? How could someone claim to love you and betray you in the same breath? I'd been asking myself the same thing about Margaret for the past 18 hours. "I don't know, sweetheart," I admitted. "I don't understand how people can do things like this. But Emma, listen to me. This isn't about you. This isn't because you weren't enough or didn't love him enough. This is about them being broken, selfish people." She nodded, but I could see she didn't believe me. Not yet. That would come later, with time and distance and healing. Right now she was drowning in the betrayal, and all I could do was sit with her in the wreckage and wait for the storm to pass. We sat in silence for a long time, just being together in our shared grief. Finally, Emma spoke again. "Does anyone else know?" The practical questions were starting to surface. The logistics of disaster. I shook my head. "Just us and them. I haven't told anyone. I didn't know what to. I wasn't sure if you'd want people to know." "They're going to have to know," she said, wiping her eyes. "I can't just cancel the wedding without an explanation. People will ask questions, and I'm not going to lie to protect them. I'm not going to make excuses for what they did." There was steel in her voice now, underneath the hurt. My daughter was stronger than she knew. "We'll tell people whatever you're comfortable with," I said. "This is your story to tell or not tell. But Emma, you should probably talk to Daniel first, before word gets out. You deserve to hear what he has to say, even if it's all lies." She made a face like she'd tasted something rotten at the mention of his name. "I don't want to see him," she said. "I don't want to hear his excuses or his apologies or whatever bullshit explanation he's come up with. What could he possibly say that would make any difference?" She was right, of course. Nothing Daniel said could change what he'd done. But closure is important, even when it's ugly. "You don't have to see him in person," I suggested. "You could call him, or I could be there with you if you want. But Emma, you're going to have questions. Things only he can answer. Don't you want to know?" I stopped, not sure how to phrase it delicately. There was no delicate way to ask if her fiancé loved her at all or if it had all been a game. Emma looked at me, understanding the unfinished question. "You want to know if any of it was real," she said flatly. "If he ever actually loved me or if I was just convenient. A cover story while he fucked my mother." The crudeness was unlike her but earned. She had every right to be vulgar about this. Polite words couldn't capture the depravity. "Something like that," I admitted. "But only if you want to know. If it's easier to just walk away without answers, that's okay too. There's no right way to handle this, sweetheart. Whatever you need to do to get through it, that's what we'll do." Emma thought about it, chewing her bottom lip the way she had since she was a toddler. "I want to know," she said finally. "I want to hear him try to explain this. I want to watch him squirm and lie and make excuses. I want him to see what he's done to me. And then I want to tell him exactly what I think of him and his pathetic, disgusting betrayal." The anger was good, better than the broken despair. Anger would fuel her through the next steps. She pulled out her phone, the cracked one from across the room, and called Daniel. He answered immediately, his voice cautious. "Emma? Thank God. I've been trying to reach you. We need to talk. Your father—" Emma cut him off, with a coldness that would have made me proud if the circumstances weren't so tragic. "Come to my house now. We need to talk." She hung up before he could respond. Then she looked at me. "Will you stay? I don't think I can do this alone." Of course I would stay. I would stay through every horrible moment, would be her shield and her witness, and whatever else she needed me to be. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised. We waited in tense silence for Daniel to arrive. Emma paced, then sat, then paced again. I made tea neither of us would drink, just to have something to do with my hands. 20 minutes later, we heard a car pull up. Daniel's BMW. Emma's whole body went rigid. He knocked on the door, tentative. Emma opened it, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. He looked terrible, hair messed up, dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt like he'd slept in it. Good. I hoped he hadn't slept at all. I hoped guilt and fear had eaten him alive all night. "Emma," he started, stepping forward like he might try to hug her. She stepped back, holding up her hand to stop him. The gesture was so definitive, so final, that he froze. I stood behind her, a silent guardian, making sure he saw me, making sure he knew I was watching every word, every gesture. "Don't," Emma said. "Don't touch me. Don't come near me. Just stand there and answer my questions." Her voice was shaking but determined. Daniel nodded, shoving his hands in his pockets, looking anywhere but at her face. The coward couldn't even meet her eyes. "How long?" Emma asked. The same question I'd asked Margaret. The same question everyone asks when they discover betrayal. Daniel's jaw clenched. "Does it matter?" he asked, and I wanted to punch him. Emma's eyes flashed dangerously. "Yes, it fucking matters. How long have you been sleeping with my mother?" 6 months, he admitted quietly. "Since March." Emma flinched like he'd hit her. Hearing it from him made it more real somehow, made the betrayal concrete and undeniable. "Before the engagement," she said, not a question, but a statement. He nodded. "Did you love me at all? When you proposed, when you said all those things about forever? Was any of it real?" Daniel finally looked at her, and I saw something that surprised me, genuine pain in his eyes. "I did love you," he said. "I do love you, Emma. This thing with your mom, it wasn't about you. It wasn't about not loving you enough." Emma laughed, that bitter laugh again. "Then what was it about, Daniel? Explain it to me because I'm having trouble understanding how you could love me and fuck my mother at the same time." He winced at the crudeness. "It just happened," he said, and I groaned internally. The same excuse Margaret had used. Do cheaters get a handbook with standard responses? We were alone one day, and we talked, and there was this connection. Emma held up her hand, stopping him. "I don't want to hear about your connection with my mother," she said, her voice deadly calm. "I want to know why you proposed to me if you were sleeping with her. Why go through with the engagement, the wedding planning, all of it? Why not just break up with me?" That was a good question. One I'd been wondering myself. Daniel ran his hand through his hair. That nervous gesture. "Because I wanted to marry you," he said. "I know that sounds insane, but it's true. I thought I could have both. I thought the thing with Margaret would run its course, and then you and I would get married, and everything would be fine." The narcissism, the sheer entitlement of that statement, took my breath away. He thought he could have both. Thought he could keep my wife as a mistress while marrying my daughter. Thought he could build a life on lies and betrayal, and somehow it would all work out fine. The delusion was almost impressive in its scope. "Did she know?" Emma asked. "Did my mother know you were planning to go through with the wedding?" Daniel hesitated, and that hesitation told us everything. "She knew," Emma said, understanding dawning. "She knew you were going to marry me, and she was okay with it. She was going to let me marry you while you were sleeping with her." The full scope of the betrayal was settling over Emma now. It wasn't just Daniel's betrayal or Margaret's betrayal. It was both of them, together, conspiring against her, planning to let her walk down the aisle in ignorance while they continued their affair behind her back. The cruelty of it was staggering. "Emma, please," Daniel said, taking a step toward her. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can—" Emma's laugh cut him off, louder this time, almost hysterical. "Work through this? Are you insane? You slept with my mother, Daniel. My mother. There's no counseling for that. There's no working through that. People make mistakes," he said desperately. "People cheat, and couples work through it. It happens all the time. If you love me—" Emma's hand shot out and slapped him across the face. Hard. The crack echoed through the room. Daniel stumbled back, hand to his cheek, shocked. I didn't move to stop her. He'd earned that, and more. "Don't you dare!" Emma hissed. "Don't you dare talk to me about love. You don't know what love is. Love doesn't do this. Love doesn't betray the person who trusts you most in the world. Love doesn't sleep with someone's mother and then pretend everything is fine." Her voice was rising, years of good girl politeness shattering under the weight of rage and hurt. Daniel's face was red where she'd hit him, but it was his eyes that caught my attention. They weren't looking at Emma anymore. They were looking past her, at me, calculating. And that's when I saw it. The moment his survival instinct kicked in. The moment he decided to throw Margaret under the bus to save himself. "It was her," he said suddenly. "Your mother. She pursued me, Emma. She came on to me. I tried to resist, but she kept pushing, kept showing up, kept—" Emma slapped him again, harder this time. "Shut up," she said. "Shut your lying mouth. I know my mother is guilty, but you're guilty too. You don't get to blame her for your choices. The wedding is off," Emma continued, her voice steadier now. "Obviously. I'm going to cancel everything today. I'm going to tell people that you cheated on me because you did. I'm not going to tell them with who unless they ask directly, because I'm not going to humiliate my mother more than necessary, even though she deserves it. But if you say one word against me, if you try to spin this any other way, I will tell everyone exactly what you did." Daniel's face went pale. His reputation in the Hartford financial world would be destroyed if this got out. Sleeping with your fiancé's mother wasn't just scandalous. It was career-ending. He nodded quickly. "I won't say anything. Emma, I'm so sorry. I never meant—" She held up her hand again, stopping him. "Get out of my house," she said quietly. "Take your key and leave it on the counter. I don't ever want to see you again. If you have things here, I'll box them up and leave them outside. You have until tomorrow to get anything important, and then I'm changing the locks." Daniel started to protest, then saw the look on her face and thought better of it. He pulled his key off his key ring with shaking hands and set it on the counter. He looked at Emma one more time, opened his mouth like he had something else to say, then closed it again. Smart choice. There was nothing he could say that would make this better. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob, then walked out. We heard his car start, heard him drive away. Emma stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door. Then she turned to me, and her face was different somehow. Older, harder. The innocence that had been in her eyes this morning was gone, burned away by betrayal. "I need to call the venue," she said, her voice flat, "and the caterer, and the florist, and cancel the honeymoon, and return the dress. The practical details of dismantling a wedding." "I'll help you," I said. "Whatever you need, I'll be here." Emma nodded, but she was somewhere far away now, her mind already cataloging tasks, building walls around her heart. This was how people survived trauma, by compartmentalizing, by focusing on the next task, and the next until the pain became manageable. We spent the rest of the day on the phone, canceling everything. Each call was its own small death. The venue manager was sympathetic until Emma refused to give a specific reason, then turned cold about the cancellation fees. The caterer was understanding. The florist cried with her. Some vendors were gracious, others mercenary. It was exhausting and humiliating and necessary. By evening, Emma was hollow-eyed and exhausted. "I should go," she said, gathering her things. "I need to be alone for a while. Process all of this." I didn't want her to be alone. Wanted to keep her here where I could watch over her. But she was an adult. She needed space to grieve. "Call me if you need anything," I said, hugging her tight. "Anytime, day or night, I'm here." She hugged me back, clinging for a moment like she used to when she was little. Then she pulled away, grabbed her keys, and left. I watched her drive away, my heart breaking all over again for what she was going through. Alone in the house again, I sat in the growing darkness and thought about the wreckage of our family. My marriage was over. Emma's engagement was over. The relationship between Emma and Margaret would probably never recover. And for what? For 6 months of selfish pleasure? For some twisted midlife crisis? The cost was so staggeringly high for such a worthless prize. So that's my story. What did you think? Would you have done the same? Leave me a comment, give this story a like, and subscribe. I've got plenty more where this came from. Looking back now, 6 months later, I can tell you how it all turned out. Margaret and I are divorced. The papers came through 3 months ago. She lives in another state now with her sister, working at a library there. We don't speak. Emma hasn't spoken to her either. That bridge is burned beyond repair. Emma is healing, slowly. She went to therapy, threw herself into her work, traveled a little. Last month, she started dating again. A kind resident at her hospital who makes her laugh. It's early days, but I see hope in her eyes sometimes. Glimpses of the girl she used to be. The scars will always be there, but they're healing. Daniel lost his job. Word got out somehow about what he'd done. Small towns, you know. And his firm quietly let him go. Last I heard, he'd moved to Boston, starting over somewhere. Nobody knew his story. I don't think about him much anymore. He's not worth the energy. As for me, I'm learning to be alone again at 72. The house is quiet, maybe too quiet sometimes. But I've joined a book club, started volunteering at the local historical society, reconnected with old teaching friends. Life goes on, even when you think it can't. The hardest part isn't the loneliness or the betrayal. It's the questions that still haunt me late at night. How did I miss it? Were there signs I ignored? Could I have prevented this if I'd paid more attention? The what-ifs will eat you alive if you let them. But here's what I've learned. You can't protect the people you love from everything. You can't see into their hearts or control their choices. All you can do is be honest, be present, and pick up the pieces when things fall apart. And sometimes, the pieces don't fit back together the way they used to. Sometimes, you have to build something completely new. Emma came over last Sunday for dinner. Just the two of us, like old times. We didn't talk about Margaret or Daniel. We talked about her patients, about my book club, about whether I should finally learn to cook something other than spaghetti. We laughed. It was good. As she was leaving, she hugged me at the door. "Thank you, Dad," she said quietly, "for telling me the truth, for being there, for not trying to protect me from it." I held her tight, this strong, resilient woman who survived something that should have destroyed her. "That's what family does," I said. "Real family. The ones who love you enough to tell you hard truths. She pulled back and smiled at me, and I saw it. Real happiness, not just the performance of it. She was going to be okay. We both were. The truth did destroy my family. But in destroying the fake one built on lies, it made room for something real. Emma and I have a relationship now that's based on honesty and respect, not obligation. We chose each other after everything fell apart, and that choice means something. Margaret made her choice too. She chose momentary pleasure over her family. Daniel chose selfishness over integrity. Those were their decisions to make, and they'll live with the consequences forever. I hope it was worth it. I genuinely do, because they lost everything for it. As for forgiveness, people keep asking me if I've forgiven Margaret, if I've found peace. The answer is complicated. I don't hate her anymore. The rage burned itself out months ago, leaving just ashes and sadness. But forgiveness? That's a bigger word than I'm ready for. Maybe someday. Maybe when enough time has passed and the wounds have scarred over completely. Maybe when I can think about our 43 years together and remember the good parts without the poison of betrayal tainting every memory. Maybe then, but not today. Today, I'm just a 72-year-old man sitting in his favorite chair, telling his story to whoever will listen, hoping maybe someone out there who's going through something similar will hear it and know they're not alone. That survival is possible. That life goes on. The wedding that never happened would have been this month. September, like Emma planned. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if I hadn't walked into that house that Tuesday afternoon. If I'd never seen them together. Would they have told me eventually? Would Emma have married him? Would I have lived the rest of my life in ignorance? I'm glad I know. As much as it hurt, as much as it destroyed everything I thought I knew, I'm glad I know the truth. Because living a lie isn't living at all. It's just existing in a pretty prison, and I'm too old for that. I'd rather have painful truth than comfortable lies. So yeah, that's my story. The day I found my wife with my daughter's fiancé, and how it destroyed everything. But here's the thing about destruction. Sometimes you have to tear down the rotten structure before you can build something solid. Emma and we're building something solid now. It's not the family I thought I'd have in my old age. It's not the happily ever after I planned. But it's real, and it's ours, and it's built on truth. And that's worth more than all the pretty lies in the world. Thanks for listening to an old man's story. I hope you never have to go through anything like this. But if you do, I hope you remember, you're stronger than you think. The truth will set you free, even when it breaks your heart first. And on the other side of betrayal, there's life waiting. Different life, maybe. Smaller in some ways, but real. And real is all that matters in the end.